Hey everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Project. In this podcast, I'll be talking to you about freedom and the concept of how it applies to an individual and how it corresponds to natural law, what real rights are. I'm just going to tell you about a new section on my website that can help anybody who doesn't completely understand what's going on with that. I'm going to talk about a YouTuber, Cyrus Kirkpatrick, that he runs Afterlife topics. I think you should definitely check out his channel. We'll go into why. I didn't even know this person existed. He was apparently doing a lot of his work on Facebook, and I don't use Facebook, never have used Facebook, can't stand Facebook. So basically, if it wasn't for Breakout, I think it was Breakout from the Prison Planet YouTube channel that I learned about Cyrus, who runs Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics channel. I will tell you where to find his link because I linked to it on my website. So basically, it is, well, let's start from the beginning. It's September 20th, 2019, and my website is OverwatchProject.com. And there I have a huge amount of material linked there, resourced there, lots of videos from a lot of different sources, not just mine, where if you're interested about understanding reality, and if you're investigating reality and you're not stuck on some premise that keeps you in a box, that you might want to check that out and use the resources I've collected over the many years of my research and see if you can learn more about and come to your own conclusions about the world we live in and why it is like it is. So, first of all, freedom. So on my website, I added a new section. It's actually just called Freedom. The navigation bar, depending on whether or not you're looking at OverwatchProject.com from a web browser or from your phone, it will look different on the phone. It has, or on a tablet, it might have the three lines for the menu on the top corner. On a regular size computer screen, you'll see most of the navigation right across the top. So it's got home, blog, podcast, YouTube, BitChute, Skeptology, links, which there are a ton of books, a whole list of books and resources there, and a new section. It's called Freedom. So if you click on that section, it's basically just a kind of rudimentary right now. I probably may add more to it, but I collected basically all the videos from a couple different sources, Larkin Rose, Mark Passio, others. There's even one from Cyrus Kirkpatrick at the very bottom now, where he's discussing is going out of body, a good way to learn about the afterlife, which connects to everything because most of my channel deals with the spiritual side of freedom and what to do after you die or your human body dies and your immortal spirit moves on to the afterlife. What do you do then? How do you know where to go, and how do you know how not to get stuck into a reincarnation back here again? So anyway, Breakout from the Prison Planet YouTube channel, he talked about this Cyrus Kirkpatrick guy, and I should check out his channel, and I did. And basically, there's a lot of videos there, and this guy has also written several books. He's got his own website. But Cyrus is the only... let's start with him because I think it's important. So his YouTube channel is Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. But if you search YouTube for his name, Cyrus, Cyrus, Kirkpatrick, it'll be the first channel at the very top. Apparently, YouTube has not decided to censor him yet or push his contact down, like I noticed that they did with David Icke a few days ago. But anyway, he has the only I think he's the only out-of-body experiencer that I know of, and I've read many of their books and looked at many of their interviews, and I've drudged through all of Tom Campbell's The Big Toe volume sets and all this other stuff, and there were so many things that mind-boggled me, because these people have experiences that I do not remember having. If I do have I have had paranormal experiences, but I am not an out-of-body experiencer that I can recall after I wake up, or it gets muddled with the dream world. So I don't have the first-hand knowledge that these people have, like Robert Monroe and others. But it always would mind-boggle me, because they would get, how do I say this? They seem to be able to filter out all the bad stuff, evil, negativity, darkness, and they seem to come up with this lopsided, bizarre view of reality. It's all about love, and it's all about oneness, and giving up your individuality, and a lot of nonsense that just does not compute when you compare it to the total vast amount of information out there from all sources, including near-death experiences and all that. It just does not make any sense. And how they can so easily dismiss suffering and evil and the state of the world, which is basically run everywhere by governments, which literally means mind control. And so this guy, Cyrus Kirkpatrick, has a much balanced way of looking at things. He isn't just judging reality based on his personal out-of-body experiences. He seems to have a huge amount of knowledge that he's collected over many years of research, I would imagine, and he seems to know what he's talking about. So he doesn't filter out the bad stuff, but he's also got some positive information about the higher dimensions, if you will, from being an out-of-body experiencer. Like for me, for example, the paranormal experiences I've had mostly have to do with the world, the physical world. So, for example, on my website at OverwatchProject.com, there is a section called Artifacts, and in that section, you can read about some of the bizarre things that have happened to me. Just a couple that stood out because at least these are ones that have physical proof. The first one being when I was very young. I've told this story before, but through a means of like clairvoyance or a clear knowing, I was able to know that there was this flint Native American arrowhead under the ground in my backyard where I used to live up in New Jersey. And I was able to know that sort of inside my mind without being able to see it under the ground, obviously. And there was also an odd sphere that I've found in my yard once that I don't know where it came from. And I do have, I wouldn't say this was an out-of-body experience, sort of, but I did have sort of a possible flashback to what I believe may have been a past life memory, where I was this other person in Revolutionary wartime America. And I was just nobody famous or anything, but I did find the person whose name popped into my head while I was having the experience, because it was like a memory. It was like actually like being in the first person of that person, and I knew that I was also me now, so it was a very bizarre experience. But because I was able to then go research and find the actual name that I saw, and turns out that was a real person, and in my memory I was being chased by British troops who were trying to find me, and I was trying to hide from them. So that was something that was supernatural, you could say, along with the finding of the arrowhead. And I've had other experiences also dealing with the physical world. I was at one time in a very dangerous situation that happened where you could say it was a life-threatening situation. And the time I spent sleeping before that happened, before I went to work that day, I would have a looping dream that was that situation when I encountered it. And after it was over, I realized that, oh my gosh, I had I saw that over and over again. I kept waking up in a sweat, and I would had a premonition of something that was going to happen. But it was also muddled with the dream stuff, so I didn't understand it exactly. Because, for example, the person involved in this dangerous situation was a man, but he happened to have really long blonde hair. In the recurring playback loop dream that I was having the night before this happened, I was seeing long blonde hair, but I misinterpreted it as a woman. So when it was happening, I was confused for a few moments. And it's a long story. I don't want to get into it here. I'm just trying to say that I have had experience with paranormal, including seeing 2 UFOs. One when I was young, a classic silver disc that flew over my house in New Jersey, and I screamed out to my dad. He happened to see it also. He was also quite the skeptic of things, and even though he saw it, he for years afterward, and actually for the rest of his life, he would say, I saw it, but I didn't want to see it. And or he admits that he saw it, but he didn't want to admit that it was real. And it was bizarre, sort of cognitive dissonance there, I guess. And one here where I live in the South, in Florida, which was at nighttime, which was a highly unusual aerial phenomena, which was definitely not an airplane or helicopter or anything like that. So the stuff that I'm able to witness or I'll hear, but out-of-body experiencers are fascinating people because they leave the physical body, and as long as they can get beyond the dream filter, they can enter what they call the astral planes and the astral environments, which have different degrees of being. And for the most part, I always kind of hesitated accepting this information because it has much less verifiable data than near-death experiences who have earthly verifiable data from doctors and nurses and family members who can verify what the person in the near-death experience witnessed out of body is correct. And, I'm not interested in trying to convince the professional debunkers out there because it's useless to try to convince anyone of anything if you don't want to believe this stuff is true and you've locked yourself in some kind of mental box. I'm not going to be able to get you out of there unless you decide to do it on your own. But the point being that out-of-body experiences do have an extreme consistency in the information they give you, and it's been written about for hundreds of years, if not more. And there is an extreme amount of consistent information that comes through. And the thing being that Cyrus Kirkpatrick from Afterlife Topics is one of the few people who talks about the reincarnation dilemma and other things that I talk about on my channel, and addresses them in a manner which I could say, yeah, I can agree with this guy. We have the same level of information, and he has an added experience. The great part about this is a little bit of positivity. I had a comment from one of my viewers on YouTube. I think it was a he. If it's not, I'm sorry, but I think you'll know who you are if you're listening to this. Kind of like commenting, what's the point if there's no goodness? And my response was, well, obviously there's goodness. Obviously, people listen to my channel or listen to my podcast or check out my information on Overwatch because generally, judging from the comments I'm getting, these are good people, or at least, nobody's perfect, but they are, they have empathy, they have compassion, they have a desire to be free, they have a desire for other people to be free. So there's a lot of good people in the world, but there's also a tremendous amount of insane people in this world, in the physical world. And many of us don't have a desire, after learning about how the world really works and removing all the filters and losing many of the religious premises, or maybe ditching the ridiculous worldview of atheists and all this other crap that's out there. Once you can see things at least a little more clearly, you don't want to reincarnate back here. You'd like to go on and live in some higher realm after your life is over here, because you've learned your lesson and you have no desire to come back here, and karma is bullshit with amnesia. So the point is that one of the things I struggled with, and it was mostly because these OBEers were all seemed like mindless zombies after a while, with their all is love and all is light, and it's not all love and light. Is where do you go after you pass away from here? After you pass on, where exactly do you go? Once you tell the archons or whoever, in case you run into anybody that would like to suggest reincarnation to you, and you say, been there, done that, F you, get out of my way, I have free will, I'm exercising and I'm moving on. And maybe you just happen to bypass all that and you just move on and never have to reincarnate here. But, based on some of the stuff Robert Monroe and others write, there happens to be a huge line of spirits or souls that are waiting to incarnate here. And they can have at it if they want to. I'm interested in the exit. But the point being that where do you go? So I'm listening to Cyrus's videos here, watching them, and at first I didn't know what to make of the guy because I don't know anything about him. I bought his 2 books on the Afterlife. I haven't read them yet, but I've listened to I don't know, maybe 25 of his videos so far, maybe more, and I'm going through them all one by one from the oldest to the newest. So I'm slowly going through them. And it turns out that if you're interested in knowing, well, where would you end up? Where could you live for eternity without, the stupid religitard heavens that sound incredibly mundane and boring, when there's actual thriving afterlife out there. And I've said before, we probably exist in a very vast, infinite universe and a multiverse and an omniverse where there's almost an unbelievable amount of possibilities that you could end up at. So, obviously, people like me, someone who seems to be drawn toward freedom, seems to be incredibly repulsed by tyranny, and just doesn't want to have anything to do with people that cause harm to others, people that constantly violate natural law. Someone like me, I want to find a place that resonates with me, somewhere where I can live in the afterlife, where I don't have to put up with Looney Tunes like I do on Earth here, in the Earth plane or the physical plane, whatever you want to call it. Because let's face it, most people down here are, in one way or another, insane. Insane is the word I would use, because they really are insane. They get polarized, hyperly polarized. There's violence. There's people that are consumed by narcissism, and they just don't seem to care about things unless they want to care about them, not because they have genuine empathy or compassion or anything. And I just don't want to have anything to do with them, basically. And the negative comments are few and far between. Most of my channel viewers give me good feedback, and that's why I keep my comment section on, because I would have never known about Cyrus if somebody hadn't told me about him. And other things that come up every now and then. Once in a while, something new will come up. And it is amazing because the learning never stops. The knowledge never stops. It's just endless in the physical form here, because you have to drudge through an unbelievable amount of information to learn and keep learning and keep learning. And so it's just really good for me to know that there is an OBE, an out-of-body experiencer out there that has what I see as a more sane view, because some of these people get warped. Think about Robert Monroe for a while, right? I read all his 3 books. Actually, I listened to him on Audible because I prefer listening to books. But I listened to all 3 books, and I, go through the part where in the second book where he talks about his encounter and the reveal of the Loosh story. And it is just seems to me that some people have like this trigger where they are able to dismiss away information so that they can comfort themselves if it disturbs them too much. And me personally, I like to go through all the disturbing shit. I just want the truth. So it's so odd when you read in Far Journeys when he's talking about the Loosh encounter and then his depression afterward, and then how he just, well, you know what? It's just all about love. And when I hear one of these OBEers say it's all about love, I know at that point they've lost me, because clearly it's not all about love, because evil is not all about love, and there is such a thing as evil. And evil is a things that violate natural law. Let me transition for a moment. So I do have that section on my website called Freedom. And the point, the reason I put it there is because I've discovered in listening to people and talking to people that many people don't even understand what the word actually means. They have all kinds of weird thoughts about what a right actually is and what freedom actually is. They have bizarre thinking about what government actually does. And they also seem to be clueless that there's actually dark occultic forces that manipulate the world that we live here on physical Earth and run it. And it's bizarre because, most people don't have... There seems to be a disconnect in the human being with understanding nature itself. Even the other natural forces, which we have to use in order to even move around, right? Everybody understands gravity, and even if you don't go to school, you observe the laws of physicality, physics, as you do things. And you understand certain things, right? People know not to put their hand on a fire, and they know not to jump off of a 2-story building. But even there, sorry if you heard that tone, got a message or something. Even there is a sort of a disconnect, because I'll tell you a story. When I first started driving, it was the 1980s, and back then there were no laws that required people to wear seatbelts. But in 1984, when I got my first car, it was 1983. Wow, that was a long time ago. 1983, when I got my first car, I I wasn't like a genius in high school or anything like that, where I was like a super science nerd or anything. But I did understand I comprehended basic physics, and some of the stuff that I realized immediately was, hey, this car is moving at 35 miles an hour and it comes to a crashing stop. My body continues to move at 35 miles an hour until the dashboard and the steering wheel and the windshield stop it. So it didn't take any arbitrary governmental law or dictate to tell me that I needed to wear a seatbelt. I wore the 3-pointed seatbelt in my car because I knew that was going to keep me from hitting the interior of the vehicle in a crash. And I started to make people that would ride with me in the car wear the seatbelts. My girlfriend at the time, I explained to her why she should wear a seatbelt, and I talked her into wearing a seatbelt. Not because of a government-tard law, but because of the laws of physics, which we have to operate in physical Earth. And if you break those rules, there's going to be consequences. Same thing with natural law applying to freedom and rights and things like that. If you violate those natural laws, there are consequences. The consequences that you see on Earth is the delusion with people with government, which actually literally means mind control. Governmental is literally, they're telling you it's mind control. And the how the whole, virtually the entire human race is in self-enslaved here. And it is a kind of bizarre way of being here, that most of the planet is run by people that are violating natural law, and they are, the people that have given up their individuality and sovereignty and all this other stuff are also violating natural law. So the entire planet is really kind of an insane world we live in. At the same time, there are really good people here that want freedom, that want to live a life that causes no harm to others while they exercise their own personal freedom with responsibility. So it's an odd mixture of craziness with obviously good people that once you wake up to the whole reincarnation scheme, you decide that you probably don't want to come back here. So I created that freedom section on my website to give people sort of a class, if they're interested, in sort of straightening out what exactly is natural law when it applies to freedom and rights of sentient beings, and how does that work. I would assume, although I haven't seen all of Cyrus's videos yet, but the other side seems to be much more peaceful in some of the places he's been to and visited. Same thing with Robert Monroe and William Bullman and many of these other OBEers out there that have explored different realms in the astral and the afterlife area, where that you find all kinds of different things there. Religious fundamentalists stuck in some astral religitard world they've concocted for themselves. And who wants to spend thousands of years or hundreds of years stuck in something like that, right? So the more you know, the more free you are. And even if here on Earth you're able to be physically coerced, one of the things I noticed about Cyrus's videos is that he points out that in the afterlife, you really cannot be physically coerced because, well, let's think about it for a moment. Here on Earth, you have to eat. You have to have clean water. You have to have transportation of some type to get anywhere of any kind of significant distance. So you need a bicycle, a car. You need to go on an airplane, a train, a bus, a boat. You can't just pop from here to wherever you want to be. And there's all kinds of governments out there restricting you and creating all these arbitrary rules and regulations that they're going to impose on you, and of course taxing you, which is theft to begin with. So on Earth here, you're really kind of, stuck in this physicality, which is really slow and dim. And then in this afterworld life, you really don't have any of those restrictions. So you really can't be contained. I don't think anything there can violate your free will once you're aware of it. You can only be conned into doing something stupid to yourself. And as long as you're aware of that stuff, you're not going to be conned. So let's see. Let's think about this for a moment. Since I'm recording this on my phone's Spreaker studio, and it's going to be mirrored on YouTube, BitChute, and on my website soon after it finishes processing, I just want to say that there probably won't be any real links at the bottom except for the OverwatchProject.com. So you can always go there, and under the links, Afterlife Topics, his website is right at the top because it's an A, and everything there is in alphabetical order. But if you just search Cyrus Kirkpatrick on YouTube, you'll find his thing. Many thanks to Breakout from the Prison Planet channel for turning me onto this guy's YouTube channel. And definitely think about all this stuff and how it relates to freedom. And, before I'm done, there's one other thing. There's one other thing that I found this Cyrus guy does that absolutely drives me nuts with these other people, is that he understands the importance of individuality. It seems like everywhere you go, every religion, everything, atheism, statism, it is all about giving up your individuality. And I always find that repulsive also. I don't believe that we blend into some mindless oneness after we die. I was created as an individual being, and I'm always going to stay, I believe, an individual being. I want to maintain my individuality, my personal sovereignty. I was made that way for a reason. I'm not going to commit some kind of spiritual suicide and blend into some mindless or some super mind where I become like part of a hive mind or a gestalt. That sounds really creepy to me. And that's another thing that I can agree with this Cyrus guy about. He understands that also seems to be a false thing. And it's very important to me because I think of it as I call it the bullshit of oneness. Because, there is, I think of reality if in a metaphor or an analogy, whatever you want to call it, sort of like the internet, right? What is the internet? The internet is basically what you get when a bunch of individual computers network together. And they create this really huge oneness, but it's not. The oneness is not primary. The oneness or the network is a result of individual units talking to each other. And I believe that our reality, based on a lot of the way I've been thinking, and how freedom gets corrupted. Freedom gets corrupted by one of the key things that is done to corrupt freedom is to destroy individuality, to create mindless groupthink, mindless collectivism, and just collectivism in general, which usually leads to tyranny. And I believe that, if you're part of like just all groupthink, you are just not really thinking at all. And that to me is another sign of how you're tricked, how we're all tricked. So individuals working voluntarily together in voluntarism is how you get the best results for everything and how you get the most progress and innovation, because everybody is contributing equally. If you think about, I don't want to drag this on too much longer, but I did a lot of studying on the history of the Republic of Pirates, which really wasn't a republic. It was sort of like a stateless society in the 1600s in the Caribbean. And it's not like the movies or anything like that, but, closer to some of the stuff on Black Sails, if you watch that show, where, people were all kind of equal. And even the captain of a ship was in very tenuous ground because he could be easily replaced by the crew. The only time captains had absolute authority in pirate ships were when there was an emergency. And it's really interesting when you look at the real history, how they used much less violence than you're shown in movies and stuff, and how they had they still have surviving pirate codes, and their codes are basically, interestingly enough, no stealing from other pirates. Right? They were mostly against government vessels from Britain and Spain. So, very interesting history there to look at how stateless societies can function and thrive and operate. With more of a state of voluntarism, which is ironically there was a precursor to that, to the American Revolution, if you look throughout the actual history there. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked now. So check out Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics on YouTube, because there's a lot of information there, and his website, which is let me go to the links on my website here and look at it, because it's right there at the top of my links page. It's Afterlife Topics, and he has a huge section debunking the debunker arguments destroyed, which is great because I added it to my skeptology page. Also, if you check there, Cyrus's debunking arguments destroyed by science section is huge. A lot of resources there, because I really can't stand professional debunkers. They're not about truth. And if anybody knows Cyrus, or if you go to his channel, tell him Overwatch Project sent you, and maybe he'll get in touch with me and we can talk, because I think he probably has a lot of interesting things to say. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, OverwatchProject.com is my website, and leave your thoughts and comments below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye.